Okay, got to live up to my reputation now. Just welcome and thank you very much. This is Friday night, guys. I'm really impressed that you've come. So thank you very much, and particularly Paul and this other gentleman who are not Michaelers or anything to do with this. So thank you. Maria's just taken us through that, and really what I'm going to try and do, I can't give you the depths of high-performing teams to transform you in 90 minutes. I wish I had that kind of fairy dust, but I don't. But what I am going to do is, I hope, leave you at 7:45 with some real thinking to do about yourselves over the weekend, because that's where it all starts, and it will become more apparent when we look at what's teamship. Why is it a challenge? Why is it to do with your mindset? So there are many other things. There are skills you need. There's loads of development things you need to get high-performing teams, but the starting point is you. So it applies to everybody in the room, as long as you're kind of at some point working with someone else. So, have you ever had, I'm sure anybody who knows Andy's classes will have had the thing about norms, about having some expectations. So here's a real challenge for all you people who have nomophobia, which is now a recognised medical condition where you're addicted to your phone. You literally physically get withdrawal symptoms when it's taken away. So I'm hoping that maybe you could just at least put them on silent, have a bit of a focus in this session. There are going to be a couple of activities and a little discussion. If you don't want to participate in the activity, it should be voluntary. Hope you do, because it's quite good fun and it's not humiliating. I'm not going to go around asking you all to look like a chicken or something. It's just quite an interesting exercise. Listen well to each other. I'm hoping you're going to have some discussion, so it could be important. And mainly, if you've got questions, rather than kind of trying to put us off track with the timing, if you could note them down, and we'll have some questions at the end. So there's some post-its, there's some paper on the table. Just grab it and make a note of it, and I'll do my best to answer it. And this one could be interesting. It's like I might be saying some things that may be provocative, maybe challenging your own assumptions about yourself or how you behave. So just a willingness to kind of let some things in. Happy to work with those? Do you think a high-performing team has any kind of behavioural commitments and charters? Yes. Yeah, they do. They really do. So maybe it's a kind of starting point. So, without further ado, we're just going to try a little exercise in teamship. So, I've got some helpers. Amanda, Robin, Andy, Leona, I think you don't know this, but you're helping me. So, in gentle way, we'd like you all to try and get an even number of people standing on, what I suggest is in your tables, if you go that way, this table comes to me. What I'm trying to get is people to stand in line.
So this table you can face them on the other side, the bar is on the floor. Okay, you just face somebody, yes.
Firstly, there's just a bit of health and safety. What we're going to do is you may have to be bending down, literally to the floor. If anybody has back problems or knee problems, I mean, it's not that strenuous, but I really do have to say this. Please, very happy that you observe. Or if anybody feels they're uncomfortable, if you've got very high heels on, you may just need to be careful. So, your you have what I'm going to call the adjudicators, right? So it's Amanda and Robin on this. It's me and Leona, who doesn't yet know what she's doing yet, on this one. And it's Andy and Maria. So what's going to happen is, here's first of all your task. You need to see if you can wash now. I want you all to put, first of all, hold your hands out like that. Okay, then I want you to fold your thumb inwards to the middle. And take 3 fingers and wrap them around your thumb. So you should have like a gun pointing. Right? Okay. And then I want you to roughly hold your hands in that position about waist height, just very roughly.
Yeah.
That's an interesting observation. So in a minute, the adjudicators are going to lift this bar that's on the floor at the moment, and we're going to place it on your fingers. So what you're trying to do is get together, and the bar is going to be placed on top of your fingers. So you cannot touch each other. You need the rules first. Okay, so here's things you can't do. You can't stand close so that fingers are touching. You have to find a space along the bar so you're not touching. Here's the second most important rule. When the bar is placed on your fingers, you must keep your fingers in contact with the bar at all times. That's your task. If you drop it, if it loses contact, effectively you're going to have to start again. But we're going to be kind, we're not going to do. So here's your main objective. When we put the bar on your fingers, your aim is to lower the bar to the floor. Okay? Right, so we're going to do this in a timed session. Adjudicators as much as we can. So fingers need to be in contact all the time. Because let your fingers drop away from the bar.
If you can bring all your fingers together.
So we're going to have 2 fairly quick attempts at this. And then we're going to do it at the end. You've learned all about collaboration, teamship, see what happens. Okay, so
your fingers must be touching the bar.
if we if you go back to where you started, guys. Okay, are you ready to drop the bar?
Yes.
So it needs to be on everybody's fingers. So yeah, please bring everybody to
Okay.
Go down. 3, 2, 1.
Touching the bar. Remember,
Yes.
you touch the bar. Yes.
You guys down?
Yeah.
Okay.
Much
And then
better
remove
at
your
saying.
fingers. 1, 2,
Okay, okay.
No, it's true.
I have to say, what a great job. A lot of, if I might, the last time I did with this in a large group was a conference with a very big engineering company on collaboration. And they were the leadership team of 60 people. And they were in teams. How many do you think were able to lower it to the floor and groups?
No.
Almost
One. So, sure. I'm really interested in okay, so what enabled you to get it to the floor? What was first of all, what was preventing you getting it to the floor at the beginning? What was happening?
People were like wondering what was going on, like it just kept on rising instead of going down, and
Yeah.
they were like, what? Like,
So we
who's
have
pushing it?
false perception of the actual, if you want to call it.
Yeah, it wasn't expected,
Yeah.
was it? Okay, so you
We
had
thought
that.
it was heavier than it was. Everybody was like pressure up.
Why was it going up?
control. I think,
Control?
yeah, well, you know, you always want to say, okay, well, I've got it, you know. And
Right.
actually, as soon as you go the antithesis of that and let it go, then it becomes a lot easier.
Yeah.
So not wanting to take the risk to just risk
Yeah.
that it might drop
Yeah.
and
Okay,
let go
so
of
you were
that
kind of
pressure.
staying kind of almost, yes?
Yeah, you told us that everyone needed to have their fingers on it at all times. So when it went up, of course, you followed the.
Yeah. So what you were doing is you were fulfilling your task. I'd asked you to keep your fingers at all times, so you were doing it. You know, that's a pretty good job. I'm doing what I was asked to do. But if the focus, what happens is your focus is on your fingers, right? So if you could video you all, you'd have seen that the focus is like this. It starts off and then it goes up and everybody's going, what the hell's going on? Then what did you sort of realise you had to start doing? What happened when you started to get it? What were people doing?
We were all talking, like, everyone down, like, just, like, don't go off, but just like everyone talking at the same time, going down and down.
Yeah, so
They
you're
just
trying
started
to, effectively, you started to look beyond yours. You had to look across the bar. You had to start looking at other people. And then you started to putting some processes in place to help each other stay together. So there was the chanting, there was counting, there was, on the team I was in, there was like the lightness, let's all do it lightly, let's let go, if you like, of the control, push up against it, but you were doing it together. So you were fulfilling two things, your own task and the group task, because the group task was to lower it to the floor. But where were you looking at the beginning? You're looking here. But then, what I know, everybody starts looking to the floor. Your focus, your thinking is going down. Let's think down, let's go down, let's count down to the bigger task, the big task. So in teams, we get this competing commitments, right? This feeling of, I've got my own task to do, and now I'm going to do this, or we've got to do this, but what about my role and responsibilities in this tension? Do you feel that in teams? It's a really, really tough thing. Because this is my role, it's what I'm being paid for, right? This bit. And now there's the big strategic objective, or the company program, or the project you're working on. And you've got to do this, you've got to pay attention to everyone else. So it's quite, what I'm trying to set up is why it's so hard, this stuff, this teaming stuff. Why is it so difficult? So what I'd like you to do is just to take one kind of half a minute or so to think of what you're working on at the moment, which requires you to work well with others. It could just be two of you. It could be a team, it could be a group, it could be a team that you're familiar with. For the part-timers, you're coming in and out of your work environment here. For the full-timers, it may be the team that you're working on here. And I'd like you to think of an example of something that's working and an example of something that's not working so well. Are you in a group or a team where it's difficult? There's a kind of tension, a friction. It may not, it doesn't have to be conflict, but it's just more difficult. And with another one, it feels smooth, easy, connected. Have you all got those two? So I want you to keep those in mind throughout this. Because maybe, hopefully, I might shed light on why the one is easier than the other and what you might have to do with it. Has everybody got that kind of example? Yeah. So we've got this funny word, teamship, I'm introducing. And it's really a kind of focus thing. In the past, certainly in the 20th century and the late, organisations had long-standing, loyal employees. It's a kind of job for life kind of context. Your career path was clear, it was linear. People stayed in organisations. CEO length was about 10 years, now it's not even 2. It's a kind of, we've got a changing world. And the consultants used to have this analogy in those days, I can remember it being, when somebody did it with me, that it was all about, the rowing on the lake. So we've got our rowing 8, and it's a very smooth lake, and this is what teamwork is about, which is true, they're great teams, but it doesn't account for the 21st century. It doesn't account for our volatile, I think Andy may have used this term, the VUCA environment we're in, volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous. It's fast changing. It's more like the analogy should be whitewater rafting. And it never stops. It's like a constant change, isn't it? Or do you think you're lucky enough to be in a rowing on the lake environment? I don't know, maybe you are. Which would you think was more relevant to your team environment, your world? Fast changing, complex, ambiguous, uncertain? Yeah. So what we're trying to do is, I may be called in to work with an intact team and develop their performance, and that's fine. The challenge is sometimes that the world needs more collaboration. It needs a company that needs to have teams that are working across continents, even across departments, across functions. So the feeling that the guiding of one single team like this can, if you're not careful, create a silo. They become very, very good, but not at working with anyone else. They kind of almost become the bad side of teams, which is cliquey. They put up barriers, they put up walls. They're very good within it, but it doesn't help them if they need to collaborate elsewhere in the company. Whereas teamship is our approach to say it's all about individuals being very capable and skillful to move and transfer those skills, whichever team they are, wherever they are in the company. So people move, right? Often in big organisations, you can find people going very rapidly from almost one project or programme to another. So the idea of teamship is that it's individuals becoming highly effective. That's what this difference is, and that's where we tend to feel that we can add value when we go and work with teams, making everyone skillful and effective. This was a global CEO who kind of phrased it like this. He's saying, you know, I can't afford to have people who are looking to this. I need people who have a broader vision because it's serving the needs of the company. It's so competitive these days. It's so fast. You need people to have that kind of outlook. I have got these that we can give out at the end, which have more content and more richness and things that I can't cover in this 90 minutes. So if you want one of those, you can get this stuff will be in there. And I presume the slides will be somewhere in there.
Yeah.
So here's our model that we use for team performance. So I want you to think of your challenge again. You've got two situations where you're working with others. One is less smooth than the other, right? I suspect that in the one that's working well, first of all, you'd find that there's a high level of trust. This is the absolute foundation. If you don't have trust in a team, it's not a team, and it's certainly not high performing. I'm not going to go into all of these. They're too hard, what I call the harder aspects. You know, are people clear on the goals and objectives and roles and responsibility and processes? And then these are the soft ones. So respect and recognition. In your challenge where it's working well, do you tend to respect each other? Are you capable of listening to each other's ideas, valuing what that person brings or those other people bring? You probably find that there's a lot of support. That if there's a weakness, then it will be filled. Someone will be willing, for example, to roll their sleeves up and not go, it's not my job. You get this very good in a high-performing team. It's like real high support. Communication. Are you sharing or are you hoarding knowledge? Do you keep it to yourself or are you willing to share it? Really good communication between people. Giving away things. This one is the hardest one. I don't see this often until I see a really high-performing team. They get to a level of responsibility and commitment, but it's this mutual accountability that they find tough. So where your little team or whatever you're working is working well, people feel that they're sharing responsibility. It's not just dumped on one person, we're all sharing it. And in the one that's working less well, maybe there is a dumping of responsibility. It happens. This stuff is really tough. So we're going to come back to these, but my kind of main thing is that out of all of these, it really starts with you, individuals, being really good at this. And having what we call this collaborative mindset. So, in terms of collaboration, when you see high collaboration, why is it that you see it happening in a crisis?
Driven by expediency and need.
Yeah. So, if there's an A&E department, for example, they have a clear and urgent and compelling need to what? What's their joint, the paramedic, the nurses, the doctors, what's their common compelling need?
Saving
Save
lives.
lives.
I love it when that comes up. So they've got to save lives, right? So when they're in this collaborative mode, you would see them, wouldn't you? all that stuff. High level of trust. Willingness to roll up sleeves, take orders, let go of egos, listen to each other, communicate, support, take responsibility. Because the level of compelling need is so high. Now, I presume that none of you are actually working A&E, but you may have done, I don't know, in the past. Anybody worked in A&E or in emergency service? So your whole life is geared to this really, really strong, compelling need. But we do have, so the challenge is though that as the emergency lessens, so does the commitment. This kind of glue that binds them together starts to dissolve, because now they've got to be cooperative, but there's a tension between what they have to do together and what they're having to do themselves. So they're having to start this tension between, yeah, but I've also got to be doing X, Y, Z, and now she's asking me to do this. When the compelling need drops, the tension starts, because thirdly, they've got to be independent. There are things that only they are doing. The doctor, the nurse, or the paramedic is responsible for particular things. So this happens in teams all the time, this feeling that it can start off with this compelling need, but as soon as, where do I stop? Where do I have to stop what I'm doing? It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon and I've just started on something that I don't need anybody to help me with. It's my job and I'm getting something finished. And I get a phone call from Ines and she's saying, Kate, you know that thing you were talking about the other day? Have you got that document? Because it's going to be really helpful if you could just send it to me. Small task, right? But actually what Ines doesn't know is that it's going to take me at least 20 minutes to find it, check it through, send it. So that's half an hour of my time that I was just focusing and planned into my schedule to get my task done. So now there's just a little tension. So the better you are at working this stuff out between you, the less the tension, but it's there. It's there for all of us. And the same thing, if you looked at the fact that when we move from this need to be independent, it's fine, I don't have a problem, I can just do my own stuff. But when it's collaborative, I've got to extend the effort, I've got to have a deeper, more skillful relationship to have true collaboration. Does anybody feel that they can see this difference between, cooperation is generally kind of transactional. It's loose, it can happen at any time, it's spontaneous. The collaboration is more fixed around this common shared goal. Does anybody feel they are in collaboration, that they've got a high need for collaboration in this project that they were thinking of?
In my job, we switch between all of those constantly.
Right. So you're just going backwards and forwards.
Constantly.
Yeah.
Every day, every hour.
And it's quite hard to manage?
Yeah, it's really difficult.
Yeah. So we have these kind of different kinds of relationships, and the skills you need are, the first thing is to be willing to kind of let go. When you started to look across the bar and work with each other, you were letting go, weren't you? I don't know your name, but you said, there was this, you almost fixed on it. And you had to let go. You had to almost trust each other that you'd do it. So this is quite a big pull. I sometimes get to teams that are what I call about to explode the can. So they kind of have this situation happening where if you're working and you have a job and you have roles and responsibilities, and presumably, unless you're not kind of reneging on them, they're taking up your time. You should be full. Otherwise, someone's not perhaps managing you properly, or you haven't got enough to do. But generally, I don't find people saying, I haven't got anything to do today. It's like it's full. And now I'm expected to collaborate on this project that someone's brought in. What the hell do I do now? Because I'm just going to add to the can. Because at the moment, no one is taking anything out of it for me. So this thing called burnout, I do a lot with teams because nobody's prioritizing it. They're saying, do it and push it in, and people burn out. Most people want to do a great job, they want to collaborate, they want to be helpful, and they can't, and it's like it explodes. Because no one's actually prioritizing. No, if you give me that to do, then take something out. What can I let get off my plate? So I don't know, I just want to keep you thinking of your projects as saying, are you needing to collaborate? You said you had all three. Are you needing to, do you do most of your work on your own? What's happening in this challenge? Why is it why is the one that's less easy more challenging? Can you start to see anything that might be happening in it? So we're going to go back to what I said at the beginning, which is there are many reasons why teams fail, but the projection when you think of a team is onto others. Can't possibly be me. It's got a problem, surely. So we project the feeling that everything to do with the team is about other people, don't we? If you don't, you're probably not human. So maybe there are some aliens in the room. But it's a kind of thing, my kind of task today is just leave you kind of going away over the weekend and thinking, what do I do? Do I do that? What's going on here? So you need to look to yourself first. How often, hands up, do you think, people who think, yeah, I do that all the time. Anybody? I constantly look to myself. Anybody? Anybody who does it 50% of the time?
Say that question again.
The question is, if the idea of high performance is first of all to be really, really, exemplary at looking to yourself and challenging your own behaviour, how often do you do that? It's just a rough percentage. To do it a lot, to do it kind of 50% of the time, or are you basically projecting your thoughts and onto others? It's like, how much do you self-reflect and say?
There's another way of saying that. Are you capable of being self-critical?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's that kind of analysis of the impact that you might be having on what's happening. So we're going to look at one of the things I want before I get you into discussion again. It's trust. Anybody married? Okay. Do you trust your wives?
Yeah.
Would you trust them to do an operation to remove your appendix?
No. Context, you're on a desert island, right?
Yeah, you're on a desert island.
You're going to die.
Yeah, maybe. But the feeling is that there's two aspects to trust. If you want to read Covey's work, it's a really great book. You may have already studied it. But what he's saying is there's the two areas of trust: competence and character. So generally, this side, any violations on this side, in the competence side, are slightly, and I don't want to say easy, but slightly easier to address than violations on this side. Why? Why is it easier to address the competence issues?
Because you can learn them, right?
Yeah.
They're
Just go to
measurable.
school and go it out there.
And they're not very much representative of your values, which makes them less judgmental of the actual person.
Perfect. So they're not values-based, so then they're not so subjective. They're objective. You can develop the skills to improve, and they're measurable. They're tangible. You can do something about this. It's out there. Over here, oh my goodness, if I do values sessions in teams and they, I ask people to values and they've got 5 people in the room say their top one is honesty. Do you think they think the same about honesty? So this kind of subjectiveness of character integrity is challenging. And the challenge is that we have this inbuilt need for self-protection. So this self-protection is important, and we feel the betrayal of trust most when we're vulnerable. So, you know, in a situation of trust, you don't have any certainties. It's uncertain, otherwise you wouldn't have to put your trust in someone. So you're taking a risk, and therefore you're to some degree vulnerable, and you fear being taken advantage of. So here are the words that we sometimes use. Oh, he did me down, walked all over me. She took advantage of her, took me for a ride. Those are the kind of nitty-gritty things. And the more vulnerable we feel, the tougher it is. So if you're in a team and you have an internal meeting, right, and someone's 5 minutes late, big deal?
Yes. Okay.
Could be, depending on the situation and what's happening in the meeting, it could be. But generally one might not instantly label that person as completely untrustworthy. Unreliable, in pain perhaps, but the level perhaps of the vulnerability is lower. So maybe the same team are doing a pitch. Anybody an entrepreneur or working in a kind of, wanting to start their own?
All of us?
Yeah.
All of you.
One of these.
So let's imagine you've got your first pitch then, your first pitch to an investor or a startup. And there's two of you now, the person that first thought of the idea. Maybe you've gathered a small team together and now you're going to pitch. So vulnerable or not? What's the level? High? High, right?
High.
Enormously high. And your counterpart, the other team member, is supposed to bring with him something that's really important for that presentation. And now he's 20 minutes late. Now what's your feeling?
He's an arsehole.
Yeah?
They've been involved in an accident.
Yeah.
Could be.
Although I think in the moment, I'm not sure I would care if they were in an accident.
Improvise.
Yeah. So barring accidents, he's not, you know, something may have happened, but he's still alive and or she is still okay. But effectively, what have they done? They've let you down. You expected them to behave in a certain way. You expected them to do what you expected them to do, and they did. And the challenge is that we're not very good sometimes about setting the expectations. It's probably likely in that situation that you did say, had a buddy turn up on time. It's a bit of a no-brainer. But often we don't. We expect people to be mind readers. Darren Browns of the world, you know. Robin, you've just done, and I expected you to know exactly what I wanted of you, but I never said. But hey, you know, you must think like me, surely. Surely that's the way you're going to behave. Particularly in behaviours, we're really good at setting out tasks and deadlines and dates and what we want from the results, but we're very poor at doing behaviours. So we don't make our expectations known. When we first got married, we didn't put that list of 50 things that we expect of our other half. Until the first time they do something we didn't expect them to do. To work it out, but that's fine because you love each other generally, you work it out. But in teams, not many, well, some people end up loving each other, but generally you're not in that state, you're not forgiving. So you've got to expect expectations and you've got to do what you're expected to do. So again, think of your challenge. Are there things that you may not be doing that someone else expects of you, but you've never actually shared? Do you know what you expect of each other of behaviour? I mean, there are some really basic ones like if I'm expecting you, my expectation is that when I send you an email, you respond within 2 hours. We just started working as a team. Your expectation is as long as I get it to you 24 hours later, that's your commitment, that's fine. So what's going to happen the first time you worked? Yeah, I mean, I'm, kind of making it, but actually, emails and things like those little things that build up because no one shared. What do we do around here? Because I get personally confronted. So I'm just going to ask you to have a kind of table discussion, and we're going to hand out these sheets. But has anybody done the Thomas Kilmann psychometric in their time? So Thomas and Kilmann came up with a principle about conflict. It wasn't about negative conflict. They described conflict as any situation in which your ideology, your opinions, your desires differ from someone else. Is effectively a conflict state. It's not agreement, it's disagreement. So there's a conflict to manage. And his theory is that we have a preference, and you can do the psychometric, but this is just for you to have a kind of think about it together. You probably have a preference for one of these modes, these styles, if you like, of how you react to it. All of them have value, and all of them have limitations if they're badly used, underused or overused. So there is no right or wrong. Each one of them has value. But if you're stuck, if you get stuck in a preference, and it's the opposite of someone else's, it can be really challenging. So up in the right hand, over here, we had that your thrust. Think about how you generally work. Are you competitive? Is it important that you win? So if someone has a different opinion from me, I'm going to battle the argument out until they lose and I won. Sometimes, and very often, that's important. If I'm an accommodator, I take the opposite view. I generally say, okay, we have different opinions. I've just put an opinion through to you. You don't agree with it. But actually, for the sake often of what is happening, either in the wider team or whatever the situation, you may feel that you'll accommodate. You'll yield to my view. And that's the right thing to do at the right time. I don't want to, often if you have competitors and accommodators, the accommodator says, yeah, okay, all right. Actually, sometimes that's often the way to do it. It's appeasing, it can be very, very important when that happens. Down here, you've got I'm out of here. It's got nothing to do with me. I'm just going to avoid it. I don't care. And actually, it may be important that you avoid it, delay it. But it's not the important thing you should all be focusing on. And you, by avoiding it, you've done the right thing. But when this is something really important for somebody, and you're saying you don't care. Compromise, we try to find this middle ground. I'm happy to win, but it's a bit like tit for tat. But don't do that to me 10 times, because I'm not going to yield the 10th time. We have to find a compromise. And collaboration is up here. It's aiming for this win-win. It doesn't mean that collaboration is always the right approach to take, but if you're collaborative and you're in teams, it is often a very good approach to have. So here's a very banal situation, and I was showing these to Amanda. Amanda was saying this happened to you a while ago. So let's say that this lovely large meeting room is booked by Sean. Sean's booked it ahead of time. He's thought about it and he's booked the room. It's important to him. And Tom, at the last minute, has an important client just come out the blue and he needs the room. So what are you going to do? So if you have a competing, it's this kind of, I'm just going to let you read them. And what I'd then like you to do is perhaps have a discussion with the person next to you or in a three. Have a think for a kind of minute as you look through those. What might your style be? What's the positive impact of you being like that? And when does it get in the way? And just have a discussion about this. What happens? What's the impact? So there's what's your natural preference? Do you have one? You may not. You may feel that you're flexing all the time. What are the consequences of your approach? So go back to your challenges and say, is the approach I'm taking too competitive right now? Or am I avoiding? Or am I just accommodating this other 3 people in my team, and all the time I'm getting nowhere? What's happening? There's no right or wrong, it's just we have these preferences. So just have a talk, and then let's see if we have any insights.
Because I was like, no, just stop this. We actually have I was afraid to take too much time on it because I was afraid that that would be too much. Sometimes you just bring it up and then I'm tired. But I don't have that. I don't have that. So if I I don't mind. Like
Actually,
I don't think anyone minds to the wrong side.
Yeah, the last three I'm going to do, so we'll just don't worry about bell things along. Okay. Well, any insights, any things that you think were quite interesting from your discussion with your...
There is another way, which is lose-lose.
Yeah, that's true.
So we're discussing about that.
Okay.
We're not just that.
What creates the
So what's
lose-lose?
the lose-lose? Pistols at noon or something, and what's the lose-lose?
Could be.
War.
Two competitors.
They walk away?
Well, an example, well, you can make the example.
So, the example I was talking about was there is no solution where either of you can win. So, for example, I have a client who wants more of my time. I would love to give them that time. A win-win would be I give them more of my time, they get more of my time, everyone's happy. I don't have any more time, so therefore I can't give it to them, even though I want to. There is no solution to this where we both, or either of us, win. They can't have the time, I can't give them the time. We both leave the situation slightly disappointed. And so I guess it's a dead, what's it called?
Deadlock.
Deadlock. I thought it was a dead word.
Yes, there is that.
So you can't, there's no way you can move forward.
I mean, the kind of situation can end up like that. But your approach would be to get to the win-win.
So actually what we were talking about is I've kind of tried all of them and finally got to the point where I sort of avoided the subject for a little bit. Then I've tried to give them more time, but that just then impacted other projects and it's not a solution. So I've tried being accommodating, we've tried coming up with ways that we can solve it. So we've tried the collaborative thing.
Yeah.
I haven't tried being competitive about it because I can't really work out how I would.
No.
I guess I can have more days than anybody else. But yeah, so you go through trying to find solutions in all the different areas, and in the end you decide actually this is just not going to work.
Yeah, there is that. Thank you, because I mean it is insightful. There does become deadlock. But I mean, to me, it's the great thing is that you've tried every which way, and not given up on it, and then it comes to the point where okay, then what now? Any other kind of observation?
Yes, another one we came up with was accommodation is mostly applied to short-term goals. So, for example, if a customer comes and is looking to get a phone, you can give the customer the phone to go and try for 1 week. That way you love the customer and more. But in long-term situations, there's collaboration. The person has used it after a week, thinks they like it and they want it. You're like, well, this time you need to buy it. So that's a win-win situation. So collaboration will be applied more in long-term goals or situations, and accommodation could be short-term.
Yeah, interesting. I could see that. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
We talked about everything that is kind of situational in terms of what's more important. It's sales meeting more important, but internal, can you do the rest of the team have other meetings afterwards? It's time very, very sharp, so you could figure that out. How is that? Could you tell the boss that I moved the meeting so I can win as well, like even if I move my meeting? Stuff like that.
Yeah, the situation and the importance of the back to the compelling need, or the is it a short-term kind of thing that can. Thank you. Any.
We also felt that the mood might have an impact on what your response is at the time.
Your mood.
Yeah.
Right.
Because we were reading this, and the first thing I told him was I feel like I have multiple personality disorder because I see myself doing each of these at different times. I've probably done all of them, but it's situational. It depends on what's going on and how you feel or what your interest is in.
Yes, it is. I mean, you will be able to do all of. Yes. Okay.
We were having a discussion about whether there's kind of an order that you go through states in. So maybe depending on where you start,
right,
you might dictate where you move to.
Interesting. Yeah. So
if you started, we were discussing if you started being competitive, would that mean that you would move then to a different state as the next step?
Yeah, as in I was saying,
whether if you start as a competitive, whether you will be less likely to be collaborative and move more towards compromising or accommodating because you started off so strongly.
And then we were sort of trying to discuss why that might be. You know, is it if you've gone into a situation with a really strong opinion about or belief about something, are there then certain states you wouldn't want to go to because then that kind of dismisses that opinion and that belief?
I think the essence is that, which is why this kind of this, you know, when you're moving, this is perhaps one of the hardest moves. Because if you're so fixed on, I'm winning, to have kind of equal winning, you give it, you may have to kind of have this, now I've got to set my mindset that I'm willing to give. So it's tougher. It's just tougher if most of us go through all of them. We use them at different times. We use them at different situations, different importance. But for some people, may have a very strong preference. So if your preference is very strong to compete, you often end up competing when you shouldn't be. You don't need to be, but that's your energy, and it's tougher sometimes.
There's also a cultural dimension on this. So Western culture is sort of more than competition, and Eastern culture is more
very much.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the other one that is how important to you as well. You know, the comment I think Hannah made about that could be your value set.
Yeah.
And if it's affecting your fundamental values, then you're liable to sort of push it a bit. If actually you didn't give a monkeys, then there you go. Right? So there's that sort of dimension. The culture's an interesting one because you then have to work out the person that it's two people. They may be a different culture. They may be looking. They may not be the same. You're not in the same. You're not looking for the same thing, right?
You could extend that further to experiences.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
So so there's two things that kind of apart from linking with everyone else. Firstly, that this is a great thing that you should probably do it in Alan Sugar's office.
In where, sorry?
Alan Sugar's office in The Apprentice, because it's just a classic kind of how do these kind of competitive people try and work together and try to compromise. And then the other thing that we talked about, which is a little bit what Charlotte was talking about, around negotiations. So if you're doing kind of contract negotiations in particular, if anyone's done contract negotiations, you kind of end up doing a lot of this around, as you're moving around.
Yeah, you do. I mean, I just wanted to kind of set you thinking about in the situation in your challenge, where one situation is working maybe more smoothly than the other, is there anything that's happening that's around the fact you're competing, or the other person, you're in opposite modes, or maybe you need to move. It's a kind of something to always have in your head, where am I right now? So I know that I'm going to an airport tomorrow. I travel a lot on my own. I'm going to the airport with my husband tomorrow, and I know that I am going to be in this mode, and he's going to be in this one, because the airport experience is awful for us. In terms of we're complete opposites. For those of you that have done The View, he's very task, and I'm very. We're just opposites. We love each other. We've been married for nearly 30 years, so somehow it's working. But I know I will be in that because I don't want to have an argument in the airport lounge. Although I don't. It's the best thing to do. And generally we end up with this, and then we end up with these very good. We eventually come to a kind of conversation where can get the best out of each other.
Is there not an option where your collaboration is to take different flights?
Sometimes
or different airports.
I think, why is it that I'm travelling to Japan and I'm having such an easy time, and nothing, I'm fine. But yeah, it's difficult. So, the main thing that we're trying to do though with this collaboration, that I would really like to leave you with this, is that sometimes we end up often in this either or mode. It's my way, it's my idea, or it's your way, or it's your idea. And it's kind of trying to change from an either or to an and. It's always an and. Andy and I always think that we ought to write this book called And. A lot of ours is about, it's never black, is it always? Isn't grey actually quite interesting? So it's kind of feeling that, can I consider more than one point? But it's not compromise, it's saying, so I don't know your name, as you described, getting to a better way. There must be a solution. This is where the innovation links. It's like, surely we can create something that is better than either of us had in mind. And when you see that happening in a collab, it's magic. It's so fantastic. This feeling we've moved beyond the push or the pull or the competition. We've got just this amazing solution. I know it doesn't always happen, but that's what I'm trying to say is teamship. People trying to do that constantly. That's the mindset that they work in. So I'm going to go finish with 3 big challenges, again, that might be happening. So in our evolution, we are kind of herd animals. We're social, we rely on each other, being together, belonging, potentially in tribes for our survival. For our food, shelter, safety, generally, we've worked together. It is an incredibly powerful emotional driver to belong. And we know the opposite of that is used against us. Send someone to Coventry, where I come from, shunning them, dissing them on Twitter, trolling them, shutting them out, excluding them. And it comes from the same physical part of the brain as physical pain. It hurts. If it hurts, it really does hurt. So one of the things that, the great thing about tribes is that, what's the great things? We're all in tribes. Sports tribes, work tribes, hobby tribes, political tribes, religious tribes, everything. And it's good for us because we're with people who feel like us, similar beliefs or similar goals or similar types of enjoyment. We support each other, we feel protected. It's great. And then there's this challenge that as soon as we start the tribe, we start a territory. When we have the negative formation of a tribe, we create a boundary. I'm in it or you're out of it. So there's the danger that we become cozy as clones in a work situation. So leaders often, they recruit in their own likeness. You get kind of similar people because it's easy to get on with someone who's like me. And we don't have the value of the difference. So we exclude people who don't fit. We create a tribe or we invite people into a tribe and then we create strategies to protect it. And it can be awfully painful if we're not getting the benefits of our differences and we're tribal for survival. So we need to manage this fact that you have to break down tribes sometimes in work. So there's the marketing tribe and the sales tribe and the ops tribe. All going, my tribe's better, don't come in. So collaboration, this kind of teamship thing, is not to be tribal. And if you don't think you are, if you work in an organisation, you have a desk, try on Monday going and sitting in someone else's desk. Just try it. What would it happen if someone comes and sits in yours? It's a desk, right? It's not a big deal. What would your first reaction be? You know, they sat down and they've got their stuff and you put it all right and you turn up for work and you're on your computer. What's your reaction going to be?
Well, someone walk into your house and treat it as their own.
Yeah, it's your territory.
Yeah.
People, desks are territories. So it's a challenge. The second one is your mode of defensiveness. So we all do it. Absolutely necessary that we are defensive. So we have it comes from a fear or threat, so how do we react to it? If someone threatens me or threatens to attack me, I've lost control, I feel out of control. All I'm trying to get back is some power, some feeling of control. So I defend, and there's 2 main reasons. There's a third one, which is freezing, but in work generally you get these 2 modes. So my way of defending and regaining power is to push back, squash down this kind of dominance. And it does not have to be aggressive or angry. So I was dealing on Monday with a dysfunctional team in Ireland, totally dysfunctional. And one of the guys came, and there were some junior, more senior members, and the guy comes over and he just taps on my shoulder. Been here for 20 years, okay? I didn't see that. Was quite nice. She was patting on the shoulder. Just put you down big time. So we don't, you know, we can, this kind of, yes, it does come out as anger. You know, anger's not always bad. You need anger, you need to defend yourself, but when are you doing it? How are you doing it? How is it affecting the other team? This, equally effective, right? One tends to think that anger gets the most. If I'm working in China or Japan, the mode generally is more to withdraw. Silence is more of a virtue anyway in that culture, so you have to work with that. But it's the feeling of create the wall. It can be, both are effective. They're just means of you regaining power. And I don't mean power over, I mean power to, it's like being knocked out, I'm going to be able to stand up. So you need to think, go in, which, do people, you know, who feels they're generally over here? Generally more in the fighting, offensive, kind of pushing back.
Yeah, I think I'll go with that.
So hands up for dominance. Yeah, okay. So the rest would say they're in withdrawal. And you probably do both. Times for both, right? And it's not that this wrong, it's what's the impact of your behaviour. So lastly, paradox here. So I've just said that tribalism is a real challenge, and now I'm going to tell you individualism is a real challenge, and it is. So this is cultural. In the West, we are individualistic as a culture. So we are reared to be and grow up and stand on our own 2 feet and leave the nest, leave the home, be independent. And we are also judged from the age of about 4 on individual results. School, exams, university, here, CAS. Your micro degrees are not about you being a team player, right? You may do some things as a team, and I gather, just talking to Amanda earlier, that maybe there's some things that are encouraging this kind of look at how you work together. But suddenly we're thrown into work generally, oh, be a team. No one is trained in it, no one has any skills in it. It's expected that we do it well and naturally, bingo. So this is a challenge, that your competence, if you're individual, then the propensity is that I tend to value my opinion often. It's harder for me to work with others. This is generally if you're British. Hands up people who are from the UK, or okay, some of them. We have an unwritten law, cultural law, that says, for goodness sake, the last thing in the world to do is to take yourself too seriously. So if I'm working in teams in the UK, particularly exec teams, their thing is, what do? They dissolve everything in humour. Oh, it's so funny in the UK, and I am one. I love our British humour. It's something that and many people think is unique, but it's also a diffusion. It's a hide behind. I go to other cultures, I don't encounter that, but it's this willingness to develop or ask for help. For goodness sake, you should be able to do this. Don't go and ask someone for help. And lastly, expertise. Oh my God. How could I possibly be wrong if I'm claiming I'm an expert? How can I be wrong? People, you're supposed to be the guru. You're supposed to be the professor, for example. It's tough. It's much better to say I have some expertise, which allows you to offer up the fact you're learning, still learning forever. So these are some challenges that you may have. So I'm hoping that in your team, for example, or your challenge, Are you being the expert? Are you unwilling to let go? Are other people being the experts and you're not challenging them? What's going on where it's difficult? So I'm going to hand over to Maria shortly. I just want you to go away with, this is a great comment, our favourite quotes of all time. And I just want you to just have a quick read of these. It's in the book. It's the feeling that if I'm working in a team, we spend a lot of time on mindsets. And in the situation you thought of about at the beginning, I asked you to think of one that was working really well and one that was not so well. Hopefully, from this little talk, there may be some things that you start to look at about why is it that one's working so well? Why is it now? Are any of these factors coming into play, and what could you do about it? Because it's looking to yourself first. I'd like you to leave that before we go to the pub. I'm going to hand over to Maria to talk. But thank you for